They think they're feared, the loud ones, the wild dogs barking at every shadow, the kind of men who mistake chaos for presence, who confuse volume with authority. But in every room I've ever ruled, those were the first men I dismissed. Let me tell you what I see when a man loses control over his anger. I see strings. I see buttons. Obvious. Glowing red. Begging to be pressed. And I see weakness. Not the kind you patch with muscle or money. The kind that lives in the bone. The kind that cracks under pressure. Loud, messy, and fatal. They think their rage is a weapon. What they don't see is that it's a leash, held by whoever learns to provoke them just right. I once watched a man destroy his own family over a look, just a look. He was made, respected, had soldiers under him, but someone glanced at his wife too long at a wedding. He snapped, broke the guest's nose with a wine glass, laughed about it, felt powerful for 20 seconds. Then came the fallout. The guest was the nephew of a Don. Apologies weren't enough. Money wasn't enough. That man's name was erased from our books like a typo. No warning, no trial, just gone. You think that's power? You think that's masculinity? That's suicide with ego as the trigger. That's what happens when you let the fire inside you run wild like a drunk soldier with a machine gun. It don't protect, it don't serve, it just burns everything close. A man who's always angry is never in control. He's reacting, not ruling. And when you react, you're not choosing, you're obeying. Anger is a command, and someone else gave it to you. A real man, the kind that holds empires in silence. He's cold. He's precise. He can feel the fire, yes, but he doesn't show it, because showing it is giving the enemy a map to your buttons. And once they have that map, you're not a man. You're a machine waiting to be activated. People test you every day, disrespect you, lie to your face, smirk when you talk. And you think the strong move is to shout, to swing? No, that's the move of a man who doesn't know who he is. A man unsure of his place in the world always reacts loudly to prove it. But the man who knows, he doesn't flinch, because power doesn't need to announce itself. It just needs to wait, watch, strike once. I've sat across tables with men who ordered murders like they were ordering coffee. Cold, smiling, and you think a scream is scary? There's an art to silence, kid, a strategy to not reacting. Because the moment you don't respond, they start to fear you. They don't know what's coming. They can't prepare. And nothing in this world is more terrifying than the unknown. You ever wonder why the most dangerous men in history all had the same look in their eyes? It wasn't rage, it was calculation, it was stillness. So the next time someone tries to get under your skin, let them. Watch them dance for your attention like clowns. Smile, nod, let them think they've won. Then when the time is right, you don't yell, you move. But by then, it's too late for them. And that's how kings handle disrespect. With silence first, and a quiet strike they never saw coming. There's a beast in you. You feel it. Every time someone cuts you off, disrespects you, lies to your face. It snarls, it paces behind your ribcage, waiting for permission to attack. That beast is not your enemy, but it sure as hell isn't your friend. Not yet. You see, the modern world has done something stupid. It told men to kill the beast, to be soft, harmless, smiling all the time. But what they didn't tell you is this: a man with no beast is not a man. He's a doormat, a husk, a servant. The beast is necessary, but uncontrolled. It's suicidal. And that's the tragedy of most men. They either try to bury it or they let it run wild. Both paths lead to ruin. So what does the Don do? He walks into a dark room, no mirrors, no voices, just him and the beast. He sits across from it, and for the first time, he watches it, listens to it, learns its language. He studies when it growls and why. He figures out what triggers it, what part of his pride is still too soft, what wounds haven't healed, what fears hide beneath all that rage. That's the mirror of the beast. It doesn't show you who you pretend to be. It shows you who you are when no one's watching. And most men, they flinch when they see that. They close the mirror, run from it, blame others, point fingers. My boss is an asshole. My wife doesn't respect me. The world's unfair. No, kid, the world just gave you a reflection, and you screamed instead of studying it. I once knew a man who built a fortune off vengeance. Every success he had came from a place of, I'll show them. And for a while, it worked. He got rich, built companies, made enemies swallow his name. But one night, at my table, he asked, "Why am I still angry, Don?" I looked at him and said, "Because you fed the beast. You never trained it." There's a difference between fire and fury. Fire is disciplined. It gives light. It gives warmth. Fury is noise, unfocused, dangerous even to the one who carries it. The goal is not to be emotionless. That's for statues. The goal is to be sovereign, to feel every emotion and still choose your response, to burn with rage, but speak with calm, to want to kill, but shake hands and smile. And when the time comes, strike like a ghost in the dark. Only a man who knows his beast can do that. Only a man who sits in silence long enough to learn where his demons live. That's the difference between boys and kings. Boys react. Kings calculate. So here's the cure, and it ain't easy. Sit with your rage. Not in traffic, not during the fight. Before. Sit with it when all is calm. Let it speak. Let it show you the scars you haven't cleaned yet. Let it teach you what you fear losing. Then you train it. You give it rules. You turn the beast into a guardian, not a grenade. Because in this life, don't be the man who explodes when poked. Be the man they're too afraid to poke, because they don't know what you're capable of when you finally stand. I wasn't always this calm. There was a time, younger, faster, louder, when I believed reaction was power. Someone disrespected me? I answered. Someone challenged me? I showed teeth. It felt good. But feelings, they lie. Let me tell you a story. It was a negotiation. Small-time rival family, pushing on our territory. They came into my club one night, loud, flashy, full of cheap pride and empty suits. They thought they could intimidate. One of them, I remember his face, rat eyes and a gold tooth. He leaned in and whispered something about my brother. It was personal, ugly, designed to sting. I felt the rage crawl up my spine like a loaded rifle. Every muscle in my body wanted to react. Right there, break his jaw. But I didn't. You know what I did? I smiled. I poured him a drink. And I said, "You're not worth the blood on my suit." The room went quiet. They thought I was soft. They left laughing. But that night, they lost everything. because while they were busy celebrating the insult, I was calling in favors, freezing their accounts, turning their allies. By the end of the week, their whole operation was a smoking ruin. No bullets fired, no fingerprints, just silence and precision. That's the art most men never learn. They think not reacting is weakness. But the truth? It's a trap. You let them think they've won. You let them lower their guard. You become invisible. And then, when the moment is right, when the pressure is just perfect, you push one quiet button, and everything collapses. See, emotion is expensive. Every outburst costs you clarity. Every reaction gives them information, your fears, your insecurities, your wounds. But silence makes you dangerous. In our world, we call it l'arma invisibile, the invisible weapon, because a man who doesn't react forces everyone else to guess. And guessing is exhausting. It drives them crazy. They poke, they provoke, and when nothing happens, they panic. Control, in the end, is not about crushing others. It's about not needing to. It's about sitting across from your enemy, smiling with a calm so pure, so unnatural. They wonder what you know that they don't. That's the art. That's the discipline. Not reacting, not because you're weak, but because you're too powerful to waste a single move. Chess, not checkers. Silence, not screaming. Strategy, not ego. Because a man who needs to prove he's strong isn't, but the man who can wait, watch, and whisper when others are shouting. That man wins wars without drawing a sword. Men talk about control like it's something you're born with, as if some are simply calm and others are doomed to rage. That's not how it works. Control is not a gift, it's a practice, a protocol, a way of life so cold, so consistent, it rewires the fire inside you into a weapon. See, the average man wakes up and immediately loses. Why? Because he's reactive from the moment he opens his eyes. No plan, no ritual, no code. He's checking his phone, checking other people's opinions, letting the outside world shape his state before he's even stood up straight. You think that man can control his anger when challenged at 2 p.m.? He couldn't even control his thumb at 7 a.m. Let me tell you what a real man does. A man who wants to be unshakable. He starts his day before the world touches him. Not with noise, not with dopamine, with silence, with ritual. In my world, everything is intentional. My mornings are structured like a military strike. Cold water, no phone. Physical pain, push-ups, stretches, breathing in stillness, reflection. Not soft affirmations, but brutal honesty. What weakness am I still feeding? What insult would still break me today? Who could still push my buttons, and why? Most men avoid these questions because the answers sting. But the man who asks them daily becomes immune. He strips himself of delusion, one truth at a time. And then he builds. He trains, not to look good, but to suffer voluntarily. Because a man who suffers by choice cannot be broken by accident. He plans his meals, he tracks his sleep, he denies himself comforts, not to impress anyone, but because indulgence is the enemy of control. You show me a man who gives in to every craving, every emotion, every urge, and I'll show you a man the world can destroy with a single word. Now understand this. Discipline is not about being cold all the time. It's about choosing when to burn. The Don doesn't walk around smiling or scowling. He walks like stone. He speaks when it matters. He reacts only when reaction serves the plan. And that plan is written not in sand, but in steel. Want to be that man? Then stop thinking motivation will save you. Stop waiting to feel better. Start building rituals that don't depend on mood. You train in the dark so that when the light hits you, you're unbothered, untouched, unstoppable. A disciplined man is not loud. He's not flashy. He's predictable to himself and unpredictable to others. That's the formula. Silence, pain, ritual, reflection, repetition. Repeat that until your body, your mind, and your soul no longer betray you when tested, because you will be tested. And when that moment comes, only the man who lives by a code will walk through fire without flinching. The most feared man in the room is not the one with the loudest voice. He's not the one clenching his fists, not the one pacing like a wolf with nowhere to go. The man you fear is the one who looks like nothing, no emotion, no reaction, a blank canvas with something dangerous underneath. That's what real power looks like, not fireworks, ice. You ever sit across from a man who doesn't blink when insulted, who hears the worst about himself and simply nods? That man is untouchable because he's already seen the worst parts of himself and didn't flinch. That's the final evolution of discipline, not just controlling your anger, but outgrowing it. Because when you're still trying to prove your strength, your manhood, your dominance, you're still in the game. But when you've buried the need to prove, you become the game. You start to understand something most men never will. Power isn't loud. It's not showy. It doesn't need recognition. Power sits still, silent, cold, like a storm no one sees coming, until the sky turns black and the lightning is already inside the house. You know who the loudest men are? The ones closest to losing control. And you know who the coldest men are? The ones who already buried the part of themselves that cared about being understood. That's when you become sovereign, when no one can take anything from you, because you already took it from yourself. Comfort, ego, reaction, emotion. You stripped it all, and what's left is clean, sharp, deadly. Now they look at you, and they can't read you. They can't manipulate you. They can't even approach you without second-guessing every word, because you don't flinch. You don't explain. You don't need the world. That's what makes the world need you. The man who outgrows anger is not soft. He's simply focused. He's found something far more potent than rage: strategy. And while the world burns itself, trying to be seen, trying to shout louder, trying to take revenge on every insult, you walk through it like a ghost, present but untouchable, powerful but silent, burning but unseen. And that's when they stop trying to press your buttons, because they finally understand. You burned the remote years ago.